and welcome to Stage to Sofa. So, this week I have got a transformative coach and peak performance specialist, Nicholas Pallesen, who is an incredibly inspiring and successful individual that regularly gives life changing performance coaching, masterclasses, workshops all over the world to the leading music conservatoires, opera houses, young artist programs, and festivals alike. Nicholas, it is such a joy to have you here today. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me.
My absolute pleasure. I'm quite interested on how you got to this career that you're at today. And if I may, I would like to say you have had one of the most inspiring and fascinating career journeys that I have ever read. And I'd like to start by taking you back to December the 5th, 2012, where you made your Carnegie Hall debut amongst the likes of Jamie Barton, some fantastic singers you were stood up there with. Now, that is a pivotal moment in any classical singer's career. And for you, I'd like you to just talk a little bit about that moment and how it unfolded and how it impacted the next few years of your life.
So yeah, it was quite a day, and it was a day that I quite didn't expect to kind of play out the way it did. So yeah, so I was singing the baritone role in this Bellini opera, Beatrice di Tenda, that I had never heard of before, and I don't think I've ever heard anybody perform since, but I, but it was my Carnegie Hall debut, and I got to sing with Jamie Barton, like you said. I got to sing with Angela Mead and Michael Spires, and it was basically, at that point they were kind of the rising stars of opera. Now they've kind of fully blown up and they're massive international superstars, but um, and it was a lot of fun, and I remember having this really interesting experience where I walked on stage for the dress rehearsal. So because of money and budget and all of that, they basically we had very little time in the hall, so our one rehearsal in the hall was like the afternoon of the concert. And so I remember walking on stage and having this moment where I was like, OMG, I'm at Carnegie Hall, and kind of thinking it was really cool. And kind of feeling that rush that I expected anybody to feel the first time they were on that stage. And we did the dress rehearsal, went fine, and then we did the performance. And and I remember we were doing the first act finale, and I was standing next to Jamie Barton, and then on the other side of the conductor were Michael and Angela. And I remember we're doing that little concertante kind of typical bel canto finale where the quartet is singing and the chorus is basically going boom, 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 boom. In the background.
I know that one.
And yeah, basically that's like every finale in a bel canto opera. But um, and I remember looking at Jamie Barton, and you could just tell that she just loved opera, and she just loved singing. She just that you could tell that she was just soaking up every moment on that stage. There was so much joy, there was so much heart coming from every word she sang, like light just beaming from her eyes. Her face was just so full of aliveness. And you know a- and I remember having this moment where I thought, yeah, I don't feel that way. I i feel like I'm just kind of picking up my paycheck, and I'm not feeling that fire and that passion that she is. And and it was kind of something I just kind of noted, and I was like, huh, that's interesting. And then after the performance, everyone came backstage to greet us, and my friends were there, family were there, and everyone was saying, oh my gosh, you made your Carnegie Hall debut, how was that, what was that like? And and I remember being like, yeah, that was fun. So where are we going to go eat dinner? It was just kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, we did that, okay, yeah, I'm hungry, what are we going to go eat? And then again, I saw Jamie kind of over on the other end of the hallway, just like, oh, what a wonderful opportunity it was to be here, I'm so grateful for this, oh, it was such a beautiful experience. And I'm like already thinking about food, right? And and as I walked to the restaurant, I remember thinking, I just made my debut at Carnegie Hall. Why am I not more excited about that? Why am I not why am I not feeling that fire and that spark? And then a couple of then so that was on a Wednesday night. And then on a Sunday, the Sunday after, I did my first workshop for my work at Juilliard. And I remember, and I was doing a class on mental wellness for performers, and the room was packed. People were sitting on the floor, they were sitting along the edges of the walls. The room was packed, and there was just this beautiful conversation, a beautiful kind of vibe in the room. And afterwards, people were lined up for 45 minutes afterwards to kind of just say how much it had meant to them and how much they'd been impacted by the class, and just how grateful they were to have that information, how inspired they felt, how healed they felt. And I remember just during that class feeling so alive. And just kind of talking with people afterwards, it was just beautiful to see the impact it had made. And I walked home to the sublet that I had in New York, and I was so wired that I couldn't go to bed till like 3 in the morning, which, I guess is like typical hour for any performing artist, but for me is like massive craziness because I normally go to bed at 10. So, so for me to be up till 3 was like, whoa, this is something's going on here. And I remember thinking, I think that how I'm feeling right now is how I should have felt at Carnegie Hall. And I
Absolutely.
thought, and I thought, oh, there's something to that. And that was kind of the moment when I knew that eventually, and I didn't know when, but I knew eventually I was going to leave singing.
That's an amazing story. It really is. And it has so much heart and such poignance that you, like you said, you realize 3 a.m. in the morning, this is how I should have felt. And I'm just wondering, having made that huge life decision, which you did thereafter, what was the biggest transition for you and the biggest obstacle you found throughout that transition the next few years?
You know, I think the biggest transition, the biggest challenge was I I had got caught up in this idea that, so I had been doing both of these careers for over a decade up until that point. And yet, even though I'd been doing it for over a decade, I still got caught up in this idea that, you know, it had to be either or. That if I was doing anything else other than singing, I was not a serious musician. I was not dedicated enough. I didn't really care about it enough, or I was, whatever. I wasn't good enough, right? Because only people who aren't good enough find other things to do, right? And like and those stories just kind of kept going in my head. And I remember at a certain point, I was just sitting in my apartment one day, and I had the realization, like, why does it have to be either or? Why can't it be and? Why can't I sing and do this? And that was the moment where I just said, gosh, I've been doing it for over a decade already. And and so I just kind of started to kind of fully embrace both for a while after I'd made that decision. And what was interesting is that that's actually when, it's funny because that's when my career really started taking off. So like after Carnegie Hall, after I had realized I was already going to end singing at some point, then I made my Met debut, then I made my English National Opera debut, then all that happened. And actually my work started growing and blossoming. And I think a lot of it is because I was just finally being true to myself, and saying, well, these are both aspects of me. And like I said, at the time, it still felt right to stay in singing. Um, but I knew eventually I was going to leave, but it just didn't feel like the right time. So I thought, why not just fully pursue both until I know that I want to stop? And then one day I just had the really clear kind of signal that it was time to stop. It's like I had done my thing, and okay, cool, we're good. And I'll tell you what, from that moment on, it was the easiest decision I've ever made in my life.
Really?
I like the actual decision to retire from singing and like kind of make it official. It was one of the easiest things because I just I knew, like I know my own name, that I was done, that I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so I I've not had one moment of regret since. And I made that kind of official decision like about 2 years before I stopped singing. And so for those 2 years, even through my last gig, it was like, yeah, I mean, it was bittersweet. I spent most of the summer crying because, it was a big part of my life I was leaving behind. But I just knew it was the right thing. And so, so it's funny because people come up to me all the time and they say, "Wow, it was really courageous of you to walk away." Like that had to have taken a lot of courage. And I'm like, I really appreciate that, but to be honest, it didn't take any courage at all, because it's like once I knew that that's what I wanted to do, like I knew people would think whatever they were going to think. I knew not everybody would, agree with me, but I knew that I knew best when it came to me. And
Absolutely.
I was just gonna trust that intuition, and so it was actually one of the easiest decisions I've ever made.
That's incredible. And what, again, a poignant moment that actually it didn't feel brave or courageous to you. It felt very natural and it was a natural progression. What does your work look like today? And what sort of things do you work on with your clients in your sessions?
So my work has evolved a lot over the years. When I first started doing my work, it was largely performance coaching, performance psychology work, helping people with audition and performance anxiety, kind of getting out of their way on stage and in auditions. And then over the last like 5 or 6 years, my work has kind of taken a big shift, so that now I would say I'm still doing performance coaching, but I would say that 80% of the work that I do, like the large majority of the work I do now, is more just supporting people in life and overall wellness, overall well-being. And so I work with a lot of people, helping them find freedom from panic attacks, from anxiety, from general life anxiety, rather than just performance anxiety. I actually just finished working with somebody who came to me having chronic panic attacks, at least one or two a day, and over the course of our work, basically she just stopped having panic attacks. She hasn't had any ever since we started working, and we just finished up, and that's pretty cool, helping people find freedom in life that way. Um, Also, helping people who are really struggling with confidence, or struggling with motivation, or kind of feeling like the inner critic gets in their way, and they just can't seem to kind of get through that. Um, Also, I also work with a lot of people who would say that they're doing pretty well in life, but they just have some really cool dreams that they want to create. They have some projects that they want to bring into the world. They have stuff that they want to be up to, and maybe just fear is holding them back, or whatever, some sort of mental blocks, and helping them with that, helping them to kind of realize their dreams and kind of create what they want in the world. And so yeah, it's really, I always tell people the work can go anywhere. you know i I'm really comfortable talking with people about anything, whether it's kind of the bigger, kind of heavier stuff we would think of in traditional therapy. I see people with that kind of stuff all the time, but also it can be really simple, small stuff, so it really is kind of all encompassing. You name it, I've probably helped a lot of people with it. So and so yeah, I mean, I still do performance coaching, but but I really love being able to also have a much deeper conversation about life with people, and essentially, helping them feel more comfortable in their own skin, but also helping them fall in love with their humanity.
There's something to be said, I think, for human before performer. And I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if you notice a pattern with people that have perhaps been in a conservatory environment. Are they more akin to put the performer first rather than their humanity?
Oh, absolutely. Because, well, and I don't think it's just specific to musicians. I, or any sort of performer, I think culturally we're just so darn afraid to be human. You know, we've been taught that so many aspects of the human experience are disorders and problems and flaws and, defects or something. And, it seems like there's this overall kind of idea in our culture that we need to be happy all the time and think positive all the time and, be in a good place in every moment. And so I think in life you just see that, but yes, especially in performance, because it kind of goes back to what I was saying about well-being. I think every performer gets into performance initially because it just lights them up. It makes them come alive. There's something about creating and sharing this in the world that really makes them come alive, and you start to see the impact that it has on other people, how it can really touch people's lives. And I think that pure just desire, that pure joy for performing, kind of like the what I was describing with Jamie Barton, right? Like there was just such pure joy coming from her. I think we've all felt that, and I think that's what initially gets us into the career. And then we go to conservatoire and we get taught that there's a right way to create, there's a right way to make music, there's a right way to sing or play Mozart, you know, and and all of this stuff. And so there ends up, and I think it's kind of innocent. I really do. I don't think it's intentional, but there becomes this innocent focus on technique where it's about the technique, it's about doing it correctly, it's about doing it right. And I think people get so caught up in that game that they lose sight of the human. They lose sight of what got them into it in the first place. And and so yeah, I see, well, in a, I see it with performers, because like we were saying, if you think that your well-being is on the line, like if you think that what you do or don't do as a performer is a reflection of who you are as a person, well, of course you're going to be afraid to let people see who you really are. Because what if they don't like you? What if they don't approve of you? What if they think you're weird? So we protect all of the most interesting things about ourselves because we're afraid, well, what if they don't like it? And and I think that one of the biggest joys in my work is when I get to work with performers. And it's funny because even when they come to talk to me about performance anxiety, they're often amazed at how little we actually end up talking about performing. In fact, hardly at all we end up talking about performing. But somehow the performing just seems to take care of itself. It sorts itself out. Because I think as people are comfortable in their own skin, as they're more comfortable with the fact that they're a human being, and that means that they're going to have ups and downs. That means that they're going to struggle sometimes. But that doesn't mean something's wrong with them. It just means they're alive. Like, and that actually it's the weird parts of them that are the most interesting. It's the weird parts of them, quote unquote weird, right? That make their art so interesting and exciting and engaging and alive. When they start to see that, and they start to see that who they are is never on the line, they just show up in a different way for performing. They show up with a lot more freedom, a lot more joy, because they know that at the end of the day, who they are is never at risk. So yeah, I mean, it is something, I see there's such an emphasis on technique that we kind of forget that's not what makes music so exciting. The magic isn't in the technique. The magic is in the soul behind it. The magic is in the human. So the magic isn't in technique. Like, we don't go to performances, I think, to hear this beautifully curated, you know, correctly played or sung performance. The magic is in the human behind it. The soul that gives life to those black dots on the page. Because, without you, they're just black dots on a page. What makes them come alive, what makes them so exciting is the human. that breathes life into the music. And so it's a shame that oftentimes that's the first thing that we kind of ditch, because we think it's really all about the technique. But yeah, I don't think that's where it is. So if a performer can feel more comfortable in their own skin off stage, it's just going to make it so easy for them to just feel more free to be themselves on stage.
Thank you so much. That is fantastic. And that will help so many young singers and artists and people alike. Thank you so, so much.
My pleasure.
And I'm wondering now, having gone on stage at the Met, at E&O, did you ever suffer any performance anxiety? And how
I
did you overcome it if you did?
Yeah, so I used to have horrendous performance anxiety. Like, when my clients come to talk to me about performance anxiety, a lot of them will say, "Oh, I must be the worst case of nerves you've ever seen." And I'm like, "No, actually, there's somebody worse than you, me." you know, I I used to have panic attacks almost every time before I sang. I used to throw up, which, as a singer is not so great. I'd always forget the words. I would shake. My legs would just kind of go crazy. My arms would shake, and singing, just performing, was just kind of a meltdown for me for a long time. And then I was able to kind of overcome it. Then I was able to kind of get past it, and and then I was able to have the career. I mean, I always tell people that, because of the work that I had done kind of at that early age, like, that's the only reason I was able to have the career I had. Because, I mean, if you had seen me, like, as a teenager throwing up and having panic attacks, like, you would have never thought I'd have a career, right? But yeah, but I always often say it's because of that work that I ended up being able to do anything that I did as a singer.
Completely. And I'm wondering if that work that you did, how much has that inspired you to keep working and developing with the young singers of the next generation now?
Oh, I mean, it was kind of the catalyst for a lot of it, because I realized, like, even though I wasn't very much in the career, when I was younger, I didn't know anything about young artist programs, opera companies. Like, I barely even knew you could have a career singing. I thought that was only for pop musicians or something. But I remember kind of, even at that point, realizing this is a really important conversation to have, and nobody's having it. Like, nobody's talking about it. I mean, we're doing a whole lot better at it now, all these years later. But when I first got into this thing, no one was talking about it at all. And in fact, there was often more of a stigma attached to it. Like, people were kind of afraid to talk about it. And I just kind of recognized, because of my own experiences, this would help a lot of people. And we're not having this conversation. Somebody's got to start it. Why not me? So it inspired me to go get trained and certified in a bunch of different modalities and things to kind of pay it forward, basically, because it had been so helpful for me that I wanted to share it with other performers and help them.
Completely. And I think, as you said, it has had a certain stigma attached to it in terms of it perhaps being perceived as a weakness to feel performance anxiety, which seems bonkers to me, but I'm really inspired to see and hear that you feel it's moving forwards for the better. And I'm wondering, how do you personally see the art form as a whole moving forwards in this area in terms of mental wellness and well-being?
Well, I I'm hopeful, because I think that more and more people are talking about this, and I think that's just a great start. Anytime we can put this stuff out in the light, it's going to lose a little bit of power. Um, I'm particularly passionate about moving this conversation forward, because the way that I approach it, mental wellness, performance psychology, is quite different from the mainstream approach, very different from how everybody else is kind of pointing to it. I think that, at least this is something I've kind of seen in my work, because I've been doing this work, gosh, for like 17 years now or something, that I think we've kind of overcomplicated both mental wellness and performance psychology. And so, my mission is just to go out and try to simplify it for people, because I think we've put a lot on our plate that doesn't have to be on our plate. We've made a lot of things our job when it comes to wellness, when it comes to mental performance, that I think doesn't have to be our job, and I think actually gets in the way. Ironically, a lot of the things that we're doing to try to overcome performance anxiety are actually making it worse. A lot of the things that they're doing to try to have more wellness are actually taking us further away from it. So, I'm kind of out there sharing what I can to tell people, there's a whole lot less to do than you think.
Yeah.
The thriving on stage and off is way simpler than you ever imagined. And for people who are really struggling, and like I said, I was one of those people. I mean, not only did I have meltdowns when I performed, I was massively depressed. I spent most of my years dealing with massive anxiety. I almost killed myself 3 times. So, I've been in that kind of dark place, and I know how it feels. And and so now I'm here kind of knowing how it feels to be in that space, doing what I can to help people see that hope is a lot closer than you think.
That's
That
so incredible. It's
Yeah.
so incredible that you've inspired so many and you've come back from such a difficult part of your life, and you're now living your truth and your authenticity, and it's just beaming out of the screen at me, and I can really feel it, and I know this is going to inspire so many people. I'm wondering now about certain singers that may feel that it's their time to do something different and their time to go down a different strand of the industry. What advice would you give to those singers right now watching this?
if if you feel drawn to it, go for it. I really, that simple. If there's something in you that is just kind of nudging you to explore it, go for it. Go explore it. There I we've made up all of these rules about what a career is supposed to look like, and what careers are valid and not valid, and successful and not successful. And we've made up so many of these rules, and like I said, I kind of got caught up in a lot of them myself earlier in my life. And I think it's just really helpful to see that every single one of those rules are made up, that they're all arbitrary things that people just kind of decided at one point, that they're all just beliefs, that there's no one way to have a fulfilling career. There's no one way to have a wonderful life. There's no one way to create in the world, that's like, there's only one valid way. Like, you can do anything. I always tell people, like, I did it for over a decade, and I was able to get to a great level in my career. I was able to get to a great level in my work. So it's not that one kind of, like, I think a lot of times people worry about, well, if I do something else, then it's going to take away from my singing or my career, my what I'm pursuing. And I actually think, if anything, it makes it more alive, because, like, the more that you're exploring all of this stuff outside of music, it's just going to make your art that much more alive, that much more colorful, that much more vivid. I often tell people, like, it is like, the great thing about this art form is that it's a living art form. And how can we expect our art to be alive if we're not living? So,
100%.
you know, but if someone feels, and I think kind of what you're asking more, tell me if I'm wrong, is, what if someone feels that they just don't want to do this career anymore? Like, they don't want to
Yeah,
perform anymore.
exactly.
That, yeah, that's okay. Like, if you don't want to do it anymore, you don't have to. Like, really. I don't think that means that you're lesser of a musician. I don't think it means you quit or you gave up or you just couldn't make it. If you don't want to do it anymore, you don't have to do it. To me, that just means you changed your mind. Like we make up all these stories that just, I think, put a lot of, grief and shame and guilt and all of that on top of it. But I think at the end of the day, you just changed your mind. For a while you wanted to do something. Now you want to do something else. Okay, cool. Like, you can do whatever you want. It's your life, you know? And so I don't think it's failing. I don't think it's quitting. Like, not once have I ever felt like I failed because I stopped singing. And because, see, here's the other thing too. The music never leaves you. Like, you're always going to be an artist. You're always going to be a musician, even if how you create in the world just takes a different form. Like, the music doesn't die. Like, you don't lose it. So, I have a lot of clients who have decided to leave performing, and they've all found ways to create. They've all found ways to make music on their terms, in ways that they really feel happy and fulfilled doing. So yeah. So if you're one of those people, like, I would just say it's okay. It doesn't mean anything about you other than you just want to do something else right now. And I think that we're allowed to change our mind.
Completely. I fully agree with that. 100%. It's such a thing. It's a personal journey. And I think if there are singers out there, absolutely what you just said, it's trust your instinct, trust yourself, and the rest falls into place. Now, this leads me to my final question, Nicholas. What advice would you give to 18-year-old Nicholas?
Man, how much time do we have? I would give lots of advice to 18-year-old Nicholas. The thing that comes to mind first is, don't take yourself and life so damn seriously. Like that. I have just spent so many years doing that. And, thinking, because, and I think because I thought that that's what we were supposed to do. We were supposed to take life seriously, and, because that's how we get ahead. That's how we accomplish things. That's how we achieve things, is we got to take it seriously. But I started to realize there's a difference between taking something seriously and taking something seriously. you know like we can be committed to our art or whatever it is that we were up to in the world, without the heaviness, without the feeling that often comes with it. And I think that was the thing. I just put so much weight on myself, so much pressure on myself. And I think a big part of the reason I did it was because of what I said before, but also because I thought, well, for many years, I thought that what I did was what determined my value, that I was my resume, that who I was defined by what I achieved or I didn't achieve. And so if you think your well-being is on the line, well, then of course you're going to take it seriously and get really tight and be really worried about making mistakes, and everything's got to be perfect. And I can't say anything wrong. I can't, play anything wrong. And, and then funny enough, that tightness actually just gets in the way. Like, it gets in the way of you being able to just freely express what you want to express. And it gets in the way of you just being you. But when I really saw that who we are is never defined by what we do or what we achieve or any failures that we have.
Yeah.
Like, that our well-being is a done deal. Like, we were born okay. And there's nothing that can happen in the world, not even a pandemic, not even what's going on in the world these days. There is nothing that can ever touch or diminish our innate well-being.
I would love to be your 18-year-old self and hear that. My goodness.
Yeah.
What a fantastic piece of advice.
Like,
Oh my
and be,
goodness.
and it's like when you really see that, it's like then it's all, it's all a game. Then you can just go for things, you can take risks, you can just put yourself out there, because at the end of the day, win or lose, you're going to be fine. Because like,
Completely
because
100%.
who you are is never on the line. And so yeah, I would say, just, dude, like, life is way too important to be taken seriously.
Oh, Nicholas, you've been amazing to speak to you today, and so honest and authentic. And thank you so much, because I feel like this is really going to help so many people and inspire so many people. So I can't thank you enough for your time. Thank you for being on Stage to Sofa.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate it.